AskReddit. Trump voters that are now not supporting him. What was the last straw? When he was a beta Mattis. Mattis, around Christmas, submitted his resignation because Trump tweeted that we were pulling out of Syria. Mattis gave until the end of February, long enough for a replacement secretary definition to be found, confirmed, and brought up to speed. Trump flipped shit and fired him. Mattis was the only adult in the room. Didn't join in on that group praise session with Trump, gave a shit about our allies, and took up the office of Secretary of Defense because the Oval Office asked, not the man, and because he felt that his duty was to the American people and the members of the military. Honestly, it feels like any competent adult who has worked for Trump ends up thinking he's an idiot. I struggle to name any prominent person in the Trump administration who is good at what they do. I got sucked hard into the anti-SJW community on the internet. I thought Hillary Clinton was the embodiment of everything I feared, and I was thinking more about that than Trump. The weird thing is, pretty much from the moment he took office, it felt like fog was lifted, and I was suddenly horrified. I realized that I had been listening to a horde of assholes, and that they had convinced me to help put the biggest AOL of them all in power. The only thing that I could say that I liked about him was that he was going to get us out of foreign entanglements, but we can all see how that turned out in Syria. When I look back and try to figure out why I was so scared of Hillary, all I can think of is that she campaigned a little too hard on her being a woman as a valid indicator of her qualification for the job. It's all ridiculous in retrospect. The government shut down last year. He couldn't get Mexico to pay for the wall like he promised, so he tries to get America to pay for it. Congress rightfully tells him to F off. He shuts down the government until Congress signs the bill to fund it. After a few weeks of government shutdown, he takes to Twitter to say that Nancy Pelosi is responsible for the shutdown because she should have just signed the bill 40-ish days of shutdown, where government workers were expected to still do their jobs and pay bills, but not get paid until it ended. He literally held millions of Americans' incomes hostage when he couldn't fulfill a totally ridiculous campaign promise and tried to pass the blame onto the people who dare to resist him. Edit for clarity, I knew Mexico would never pay for the wall. I thought pretty much everyone knew that, but I believed it would evolve into a conversation about border security, not a literal wall. I didn't vote for him based on the wall or even border security. My reason is that I work in the firearms industry, and voting for Hillary would have been tantamount to voting against my career. The shutdown and resulting shitshow is where any remaining respect and support for not just Trump, but Washington in general evaporated. He couldn't even take responsibility for his own actions, and it cost taxpayers millions of dollars. I lost a lot of my support for him almost immediately. I, and many of my fellow voters, really thought it was an act. I really thought he would be presidential once he won. I also never thought he would win, and couldn't bring myself to vote for Hillary. But when he won, and was still saying terrible things, and giving away secrets, and being a general prick to everyone, it was clear he was who he ran as. The child detainment also really got to me. I'm the type of guy who can make excuses for awful things. If I think that there's legal justification, at least I could understand it. In the beginning, it made sense to a certain extent. You can't put kids in jail. Parents arrested of crimes lose their kids. Illegal immigration is a crime, etc. But then my wife looked at me and said, right, but these are kids. How would you feel if those were your kids? Would they deserve it? And I realized how wrong it actually was. And then we started losing them. WTF. At the end of the day, I believe in family, country, party when it comes to politics. And after everything Trump did that I knew was bad for my family and my country, party wasn't an excuse anymore. It was weird too, because as soon as my eyes were opened, I started to see all of these things in a different light. Like how bad he was. I'm a staunch conservative who voted for Obama twice, but whatever, and a Christian, and this dude is clearly not a Republican, or at least doesn't hold the moral position that I always tried my best to vote for, and he's definitely not someone Jesus would support, that's for sure. Made me ashamed of my vote, and I never want to feel that way again. I was never a supporter, but I always try to be optimistic, and realized he could do some good somewhere along the way. Then the travel ban kept Kurdish vets from coming here to start a life like we promised them for helping us in the Middle East for over a decade. Kurdish vets and their immediate families who sold off all of their assets and prepared to come here were suddenly homeless. Okay, shitty, but maybe this will get fixed. Then there's the more recent situation with the Kurds. It's unbelievable. These people have been dying so that some of us don't have to, and have been a huge help to the war on terror, and they're being tossed aside like a used napkin. Pardoning Joe Arpaio. August 27, 2017. That was what I considered the first major violation, when a president shouldn't be using his power like that for me, and that's when I started to take a closer look to see who Trump actually was. Wiki says, Arpaio has been accused of numerous types of police misconduct, including abuse of power, misuse of funds, failure to investigate sex crimes, criminal negligence, abuse of suspects in custody, improper clearance of cases, and lawful enforcement of immigration laws, and election law violations. A federal court monitor was appointed to oversee his office's operations because of complaints of racial profiling. The US Department of Justice concluded that Arpaio oversaw the worst pattern of racial profiling in US history, and subsequently filed suit against him for unlawful discriminatory police conduct. Arpaio and the MCSO were named as defendants in dozens of civil lawsuits brought by citizens arrested by Arpaio and his deputies alleging wrongful arrest, wrongful death, entrapment and other claims, costing taxpayers in Maricopa County over $140 million in litigation against Arpaio during his tenure as sheriff. When fake news became his catchphrase, suggesting your followers only listen to you and no one else. He controls what an entire demographic thinks because they refuse to accept credible sources that disagree with them. The moment he backed out of the Iran deal, we had finally reached an agreement that would curb Iran's nuclear program and have them under IAEA while still bringing them into the international market and accepting them into our world economy. Now, we have the hardliners in Iran have more power because of this move, and our word means nothing now. No country will ever make deals with us when we see how easily we can back out of them. It ruined our credibility. The deal wasn't even that bad. I bet he didn't even effing read the damn thing. I'm biting my effing tongue and voting Democrat. Please for F's sake don't pick Biden, otherwise I will reconsider. I thought he was doing a good job until about a year ago while I was scrolling through his Twitter trying to find a tweet, and it clicked in my head how much of a dumber he is. He tweets like a 7th grade bully, and his entire platform being based on insulting his opponents instead of engaging them in arguments. Also, many of his supporters are borderline cultists who treat him as a god. Edit. Just to clarify, I'm Canadian. I supported him by talking about how good he was and how he was tough among other acts. I did not vote for him. Please don't get the wrong idea. A lot of American politics spills into Canadian politics, you know, the whole squirrel sleeping by an elephant thing. Think this is so fascinating. All politics aside, I heard him speak in 2016 for like 60 seconds and realized he was immensely stupid. I don't say that because I disagree with his politics. I say that because he cannot form proper thoughts and has next to no self-awareness. I'm also so interested to see how so many people don't see this, and I'm even more fascinated when, as you said, it finally clicks for some people. At this point I don't want a president who believes everything I do. That would be odd. I just want a leader who can form a coherent thought/argument and has some semblance of self-awareness. I really only voted for him because I didn't know any better. This was my first election as a fresh 18-year-old, and being from a very red state, it was only after going to college and living in my own did I really start to form my own thoughts on things. Red media does work wonders, especially when you have parents that only watch Fox News. My parents are finally seeing the damage Fox News does. I was very surprised to hear they started to pull away from it after years of watching nothing but, and you're right, the right does an amazing job at pushing propaganda. It's seriously impressive. I'm finally getting my mom at least to watch less biased news. I have her on NPR since they stay out of the petty stuff. They're usually top for non-bias, and it's been an absolute eye-opener for her. She's learned so much that Fox never reports because it makes Trump look bad. I also stressed to her to look at many news sources, read past the headlines, and take any headline that is designed to invoke an emotional response with a grain of salt. Now if only I can get my dad on that wagon. For real, it's nice to see that some PPL that voted for him are willing to admit they maybe, just maybe, they made a mistake. We all make mistakes, let's not make the same one twice. It seems like a lot of PPL are just stubborn, and for whatever reason they actually like Trump as a person. I voted for Trump. I'm economically conservative but socially liberal. I voted for Trump hoping he'd do what he said he'd do, come in and clean house. Fire the corrupt. He seemed to have the balls and the I don't give a shit attitude to get it done. Nope. I feel swindled. He has done none of what he promised, and his tweets are embarrassing. I will not vote for him again. Well, my parents were Trump supporters, but after the California fires began taking off in such a large scale to a point where our house was 10 miles from being destroyed, that's where they lost him. Trump has been repeatedly bashing on California during these fires, and it's fucking rude. California is a dominantly blue state, but it has Republicans too, but because it's blue, Trump is just gleeful to tell us it's our fault. When he decided to start flinging executive orders around when he didn't get his way and using literal bullying to defend himself against people of opposition. A leader doesn't act in that